Dennis the Menace and Desperate Dan preside over the big break cartoon character Christmas special in 25 minutes. The early evening news first on BBC One with Jill Dando at 5:15.
A British Olympic yachtsman is feared drowned as high seas wreck one of the world's premier races. Helicopters have winched many crews to safety, but some are still unaccounted for. American planes enforcing the no-fly zone in northern Iraq come under attack from surface-to-air missiles. And another duck for Atherton as Australia take the upper hand. Good evening. A British Olympic yachtsman is missing, presumed drowned, after being washed overboard in treacherous seas off the southeast coast of Australia. 3 other people are still unaccounted for. 2 men, both Australians, are confirmed dead. The 625-mile race started from Sydney on Boxing Day. The yachts were hit by gales as they approached Gaybo Island yesterday. Helicopters have so far rescued more than 50 people. More than half the yachts have withdrawn from the race, but the organisers won't call it off, and the lead boat is expected to arrive at Hobart shortly.
30-foot waves and 90-mile-an-hour winds have turned the Sydney to Hobart yacht race into a tragedy for several families and set off the biggest maritime rescue operation in Australian history.
Mayday, mayday, here is Winston Churchill, Winston Churchill.
More than half the 115 yachts which started out on Boxing Day have been forced to give up. Some capsized and rolled in the mountainous seas, others had their masts snapped and rigging torn down. Several yachts were abandoned at sea. In the perilous skies above, 26 aircraft, including military and civilian helicopters, which somehow winched more than 50 people to safety.
I think there's been a great bravery by the crews of the helicopters, in some cases having to go into the water themselves with seas of 6 and 8 and 10 metres, terrible seas.
Many of those saved had sustained severe injuries.
I'm glad to be alive, mate, I'll tell you.
Just after the first guy was picked up by the helicopter, we got another 360 rollover without the mast, and that put a lot of water in the boat.
Still missing as aircraft with thermal imaging cameras hunt them into the night are 3 Australian sailors swept overboard from a life raft and the British Olympic yachtsman Glyn Charles from Hampshire, who was steering the yacht Sword of Orion when a giant wave capsized it and split it open.
They're somewhere, but you know, not being very far offshore, and with so many aircraft looking for them, you think we would have spotted something by now.
Flags were lowered at Glyn Charles's local sailing club today as friends paid tribute to a gifted yachtsman posted missing more than 24 hours ago.
The water's not that warm, and I can't see, I'm afraid, that there's much hope for him, and this saddens me and all my friends, and I feel for his family.
Despite what's become the worst yachting tragedy since the Fastnet disaster 19 years ago, the organisers say there's no question of calling off the race. George Eakin, BBC News.
American fighter aircraft have attacked a missile battery in northern Iraq after coming under fire from ground-to-air missiles. It was the most serious incident since the end of the British and American airstrikes on Iraq 8 days ago. The American Defense Department said all the jets had landed safely back at their base at Incirlik in Turkey. Iraq said 4 people were killed in the attack. The fighters were enforcing the no-fly zone over northern Iraq, which is patrolled by US and British aircraft. Here, the Ministry of Defence says no British aircraft were involved in today's attack.
This morning, a routine patrol took off as normal from Incirlik Air Base in Turkey. Pentagon officials say the Iraqis fired 3 surface-to-air missiles at these American F-16s. The Americans fired back, allegedly killing 4 Iraqi soldiers on the ground.
Our pilots have the authority to protect themselves if they're threatened or attacked. They took appropriate action today in responding to Iraq's actions. Once again, I want to tell you I am very proud of the work they do, the risks they take, the skill and the professionalism with which they do it. They attacked because they were attacked, and they did the appropriate thing. We will continue to enforce the no-fly zones.
The Iraqi administration had been threatening to retaliate for Operation Desert Fox ever since it ended 10 days ago. but the Pentagon is hoping that the bombing campaign destroyed most of Iraq's surface-to-air batteries, though clearly it didn't destroy all of them. The UN Security Council meets tomorrow, but the chances of re-establishing diplomatic channels with Baghdad look slim, especially after today's incident. Tom Carver, BBC News, Washington.
1 million pints of beer are smuggled into Britain every day, according to new research. The Brewers and Licensed Retailers Association, which carried out the survey, says the illegal trade is threatening jobs in breweries and pubs. Customs estimate that smuggling cost around £240 million in lost taxes last year.
Brewers say that of the 1.5 million pints of beer brought into Britain every day, only a quarter is imported for personal use, the rest sold on illegally. And here's the incentive: piles of cheap beer in France, where the duty is only 4 pence a pint, compared with our 32 pence. This pub near Dover is one of many whose trade has suffered. Ironically, many of those on the booze run from Calais use it as a stopover. The industry says that only a cut in duty will stop more pubs from closing.